Well, greetings and salutations, my fellow citizens of Middle-earth. Welcome to our Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, open spoiler discussion after show here on our YouTube channel. I am going to be your host today. My name is John Campea. Great to have you guys here. Also joining me, of course, right here, Mr. Robert Meyer-Burnett. Robert, how you doing?
I'm good. I am good. I'm eager to talk about this show with you two lovely folks.
Aw.
And sitting beside Robert, our very own Harfoot, it's Kris Carr.
Yeah.
Kris, how you doing?
I'm great. I was eating blackberries while I was watching this show. I had the best time.
You know what? A little bit about me. I don't eat berries.
Shocking.
I don't like strawberries or berries or cherries. I like some strawberry flavored things or some berry flavored drinks.
Do you like things that grow in nature, John?
Not really.
Okay.
No, I'm not much of that. I mean, apples is about as far as I go.
That's fair.
That's why I take a whole lot of Athletic Greens.
I was going to say, thank you so much to
And
our sponsor for
multivitamins.
keeping
Yes,
you alive.
for keeping me alive. Anyway, guys, it is great to have you here today. Here's what we're going to do on the show. We're going to spend the first few minutes where the three of us are going to be talking about our impressions of the first three episodes of Lord of the Rings, or first two episodes, I should say, Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. And then we're going to throw it open to you guys. Right now, our super chats are open. They will only be open for a few more minutes, though, because you guys have already filled them up pretty much before we started the show. So then we're going to spend the second half of the show just hearing your thoughts, theories, ideas, speculation, questions, whatever. And that's what we will do there. So with that, let's get into it a little bit here. We're going to start with our general impressions, and I'll kick things off just because you've already heard, so I'll get this out of the way. So I was lucky enough that I got to see this on a movie screen, which visually this show is beyond impressive. I mean, visually it's absolutely gorgeous. And so being able to see it on a movie theater screen was pretty special. I like that. However, you guys already heard me talk about that. I am not a big fan of the first episode. There are certainly some interesting things that happen in the first episode, which we'll talk in detail in a little bit. But overall, I just found it to be slow. Now, people misinterpret and confuse slow burn with slow. Slow burn can be great. You know, that kind of a cadence can be awesome. Slow is just when really nothing happens or a scene happens that is meant to communicate an idea to a concept to the audience. And that concept gets delivered, and then we still just meander in the scene for another 3 or 4 minutes purposelessly. A great example of a show that does this great is the new House of the Dragon. They'll have this incredible scene. The point that the quote unquote filmmakers are trying to convey to the audience gets made, and then they move on to the next scene. They stay as long as they need to, not 1 second more, not 1 second less. And I found that the first episode meandered so much that by the time the credits rolled, I was like, I'm not even 100% sure I want to watch the second episode. Despite the fact that this was like the most anticipated show I've had for the last 5 years. Now, thankfully I did, because the second episode I found significantly better. Like, I found the pacing was a lot better. They got more into actual, instead of just surface stuff with some of the characters, they got a little bit deeper into the characters. They actually finally start to introduce a couple of the mysteries of what's going on. Definitely, if you know much about the Tolkien lore, you start to pinpoint a whole lot of stuff that you're like, I know where that's going. And like little things popping up here and there. It was just the second episode was the show I was looking for. The first episode absolutely was not. So I don't know right now. I'll say this. I am now very excited to watch the third episode, but right now, the two Lord of the Rings episodes for me are 1 and 1. So I don't know, going into episode 3, are we going to just get a bunch of episode 1s and then a bunch of episode 2s? Is episode 1 now behind us and it's all up hill from here? I'm not really sure. But by the end of the evening, when I watched the first 2 episodes, it did at least end on a high note for me. I was now engaged with it. Thought all the stuff at sea was fantastic. I love that stuff. So everything about the second episode, I pretty much ate all up. But yeah, so I'm excited for the next episode. I just really wish they had gotten off to a stronger start, because again, I understand you're going to introduce characters and do world building, but every movie has to do that. Every movie that has just 2 hours to tell the whole story has to start with a clean slate, introduce you to the characters, introduce you to the world that you're in, get you introduced to the concepts and the struggles and the conflicts that are going to be happening here, bring you through the body of it, and bring it to a conclusion. There's no excuse for the first episode of a show to not be engaging off the bat. None. No excuse for it. And some of the greatest shows of all time have started with bad first couple of episodes. Spartacus is my third favorite TV show of all time. The first 4 or 5 episodes are unwatchable. Well, 3 or 4. The first 3 or 4 episodes are almost unwatchable, save, of course, for the delightful Aaron Cummings. But then it goes on to be my fair, but still, there's no excuse not to be able to start strong. Anyway, so those are my general opinions on this. Kris, I've been dying. I was tempted to phone you at 1 a.m. last night. I thought she's in bed, but I want to know what she thinks. So I didn't. So I did.
That's why you just do a voice memo and be like, hey, Car, when you're awake.
I wanted to hear from you right now last night, but you had a chance to watch it. What's your general impressions of the first couple episodes?
I freaking love this. And I know. I am a Tolkien sycophant. I love this kind of stuff. And I went into it, though, very cautious because of your review of it. And I really enjoyed the first episode. I'm going to be honest about it.
I've heard from some people who got slapped back at me, said they loved the first episode.
I thought it was great, but this goes back to everything being subjective, right?
Right.
We kind of have like a Three Bears and Goldilocks situation going on here today of, for you, we're 1 and 1. For me, everything was just right. For Rob, we'll find out soon how he felt about it. But for me, I feel like we set this up really well. We see the atrocities of war, and we have an emotional connection to that. We have all of our different characters set up, and we know how they're going to fit into this greater world. How Nori wants to live a bigger life than maybe somebody who just constantly is migrating with her family and wants to be part of a bigger story. How we have this almost kind of Regency era romance between an elf and a human, which I love. How we have, these issues of nobility and Elrond wanting to, be more in his standing too, and Galadriel fighting for what she believes in, and having her own people not be on the same page as her. I loved all of that. And then, of course, the big conclusion of episode 1 leading into episode 2.
With the stranger arriving.
The stranger, where there's so much fun lore happening here.
Who's that? The stranger.
I've heard a lot of different
there's a
theories.
lot of options
there's
here.
no one definitive theory that people have about that.
I'm very excited about getting into this because there's several theories that work, especially for playing with the timeline. I'm pumped. I think this is very fun. I ate my Hobbit meal with it. I had so much fried bacon with this show. I was a happy little camper.
One really interesting thing about it for me, looking at Galadriel, was there's a scene in the Peter Jackson films, of course, where Galadriel is offered the ring, and she goes, "But I would become a queen," and all the darkness, and like, I don't know, you seem real nice. Watching episode 1, which is the episode I don't like, but still watching episode 1, and you see right off the bat, she is self-absorbed in many ways. She is obsessed with her own revenge. And there's this one moment, and if you don't pay attention, it could fly past you, but there's this one moment where like they're pushing through the winter, and one of her own elves falls down. And like one of the elves is saying, "Hey, hold up a second." No, we keep going. It's like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, she is so, like, we get it. Like, she's focused on revenge, but we're being introduced to this character who has become entirely selfish about it. Like, it's now all about her. And there's this great conversation between her and Elrond where this becomes clear. It's not, there is a part of it here that is her desire to make sure that the free peoples of Middle-earth stay safe. I'm sure there's a part of that.
But she was personally wrong.
Yes, because when she's talking to Elrond in the forest, and Elrond starts like bringing everything up, it's like, it's time to put up your sword. But then what's left for me? I go into the West, great, but now everything is me. And seeing that, suddenly I now think about that scene in Peter Jackson's version of Lord of the Rings. And now it suddenly puts that whole scene when she goes, "Yeah, okay, that's nice you want to give to me because you think I'm this angelic, perfect being. But there's a side of me that if I get that ring blue," and we were seeing that in the first
in the last
episode.
hundreds of years,
1,000 years. Yeah. So that aspect of it, I really did like because, I was a little bit afraid of coming out of the gate where, we've got a lot of these shows where we're introduced to the hero and the hero is basically Samuel Jackson, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and the other guys. They're just like, everything they do is perfect and blah, blah, blah. And I like the fact that we're coming right out of the gates and instantly we're saying she's a bit of a dick. And I mean, a good guy, definitely a good guy, but I love it when we realize the good guys can be total dicks too.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we'll go into more specifics a little bit later. Rob, you had a chance to watch the first 2 episodes. What are your general impressions of the first 2 episodes before we go into specifics?
Well, I think, like you said, it's a beautifully made show. I mean, it does have the requisite, it feels magical, it feels larger than life, it feels, I believe that I'm in Middle-earth, a different iteration of Middle-earth, but I believe that I'm in Middle-earth. What I had a problem with, and I think what you were saying about the first episode, I think the reason that the first episode is incredibly slow is because we really don't know whose story this is. what is this story about? And I go back, you go back to Fellowship of the Ring, and really the 3 Lord of the Rings movies are going to wind up being longer as far as one long story than the first season of this show is going to be. So it's really important, I think, that out of the gate, you understand what is the story that's happening. And like you pointed out, there's all these pieces that are being put on the board. But even after the end of the first episode, I was like, okay, what's happening here? There's all these sort of disparate elements. And are they setting up some kind of a fellowship? But by not knowing what the thrust of the story is, like you said, a slow burn is a slow burn, but you're still seeing the forward momentum of a story. Now, it might not be happening as fast as possible, but the individual scenes are drawing you in. Now, it might not be slam bang action, but it's still intriguing. You can have 2 young characters sitting in a citadel in front of a bunch of burning candles, and they're having a conversation, and it's riveting.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's slow, no action, but it's meaningful. With this, like the scene with Nori and the Harfoots, I mean, that scene went on for and I'm going to say 10 minutes.
It was 50 seconds.
When they're they're out past the gate collecting, eating blackberries, and I'm going, okay, what purpose does this scene serve? It was kind of neat when they think something's, these 2 travelers are coming and they're hidden, and I love when they popped out and the storefronts are set up and all the food is laid right out.
Because we learned something about their entire culture,
Exactly.
society. We learned right away.
Absolutely.
Like
And I love the way that was done. I'm like, that's kind of like when the dwarves are washing all the dishes and at the beginning of The Hobbit,
I love that scene, by the way.
Love that scene. It's so much fun. I was really enjoying that. And then we spend all of this time with them out. There's a warg or whatever out there watching them, and they're eating all this food. And I'm thinking the real gist of that scene is when she comes back and talks to her. I guess that's her mom.
See, but okay, this goes back to what I was saying just a little bit earlier. Remember when I said it in this first episode, to me, it feels like the idea, the concept that the filmmakers are trying to communicate to the audience gets made, but then they meander for another 4 or 5 minutes. See,
Totally agree.
I got that scene with them going out. I learned about the whimsical nature of the Harfoots, especially learning more about Nori, learning a little bit about Nori, but then that scene should have moved on. Instead, we lingered longer than we needed to, and we didn't need to see, we saw the wolf kind of on the thing. Okay, we saw it. But now we need another 5 or 6 second shot at the end where the wolf steps. Okay, no, we got that already. That kind of represents, I think, the drawn outness of the
Absolutely.
first episode.
And then you go back and she has this conversation, I guess, with her mother or whatever, who's saying, you can't stray off the path. Why can't you just stay with your family and not go anywhere and not have this wanderlust and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I already got that. I got that from the scene before. They have already wandered off the path. They've gone past the fence. They're gathering these blackberries. I get it. And I felt like I was kind of like I was dumb. I get it, you guys. As storytellers, you've conveyed what you needed to convey to me again. But let me tell you again
I'm going to disagree
what
with
it's
you on
about.
that one. I'm going to disagree with you on that one because I think if the point of that interaction was about us learning about Nori, I could totally see your point. I think the point of that interaction was us learning about the Harfoots.
Yes.
And their philosophy of
Sure.
This is what we do. And so for that reason, I didn't mind that scene. That scene kind of worked for me.
I would have reversed the scenes. I would have reversed it,
yeah.
and had her mother tell her all this stuff, and then they went out.
And kept it shorter.
And yes, and compressed all that because you're getting all this stuff. And the thing about it is when you see the Harfoots sort of bloom, out of being in hiding, it was fun, and you think that these are a wacky bunch of people.
They're fun.
But I felt like that was kind of the same way with Galadriel and everything. It was you're telling us these things over and over again. And I felt that the audience, as an audience member, I felt I was ahead of the story they're trying to tell me. I got it. I understood that because you're also trying to sort of emulate the structure of something that we've already seen in what we saw in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I felt that was an odd choice to make, even to the point where Galadriel is narrating this opening scene and explaining about Morgoth and the whole, but you still didn't, Morgoth is a huge character. Those battles went on for generations with people huge. If you read about where Morgoth came from, I didn't feel it was as, the prologue of Fellowship of the Ring is very specific. It's very succinct. You know where you're at. But even when she's telling us all about Morgoth, I'm like, what does he want? What's going on here? Why are they fighting
I didn't
him?
get that.
I mean, because it's all over the place.
I thought the opening monologue, the first 5-10 minutes, I thought the one really great part of the episode, like that whole opening
when she's talking to her brother,
to establish the stuff with her brother, the understanding where the world is at right now. That okay, this is the state of the world. We have gone through this. This was the big horror, and even if you're a newcomer into all this, you've got to understand, for you to get Sauron, you've got to understand the background of Morgoth.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to get to that. You got to get to that point first.
do we understand the background of Morgoth?
To the one, yeah, I think we do. I think you really, really do to understand Sauron.
Well, and I think part of it too is everyone thinks it's over. That's the big part here. Everyone's moved on. And Galadriel is just still clinging to this. And everyone's like, dude, this is old news. This is centuries ago. No one cares.
But to your point about Galadriel, the thing I was bringing up that I do like, that we established she's got this enormous character flaw, that she's obsessed with this, blah, blah, blah. They gave us about 5 scenes communicating that same message.
Oh, yeah.
See, and that's where that first episode, to me, felt like it could have been used much better. Also, I got to say, while I have a feeling I'm going to really get into Arondir, Arondir. I have a feeling later on I'm probably going to really dig Arondir. Nothing about that. I mean, we were introduced to the idea that, hey, look, because a bunch of the humans sided with Morgog, that the elves still have stations all over the place, keeping an eye on the world of men. Oh, actually, okay, that's good world building. Great, love it. You establish that there's a lot of distrust about the world of men are kind of like citizens looking at the elves as cops, and there's a lot of distrust there. And okay, got it. But beyond that, and also we understand that there is a flickering of what's the word I'm looking for? Not compassion. What's the word I'm looking for? Damn it! Not endearment. Not empathy, but between him and.
Oh, Brown?
Between him and her, yeah. Not sympathy.
There's some romance.
Endearment? No.
Fondness?
Fondness. That's the word I was looking for. There's a degree of fondness between there. So I like that. But there was an awful lot of screen time of it. And then it just kind of whiffled on. I like the idea. I love the callback when they're talking about, how were the mice last night? Scratching at things. But then you realize a little bit later, it was more than that. Okay, that was a nice little callback to that. But again, that doesn't really pay off until episode 2. Which was a lot more. There's a lot more there. We move around the map, all that kind of stuff. I get it. The world is vast, but by the end of the first episode, I never felt that the story had started.
Right.
That's the thing. By the end of the first episode, I never felt like the story had started. And I think that's why when the first episode ended for me, I turned to Anne, I'm like, do we just go? Because there was a 2 or 3 minute intermission between the episodes. Do we just go? Because it did not engage me at all. Now, episode 2, it changes. And I'm very, very glad I stuck around for episode 2. But anyway, let's talk for a second about the stranger. Because that's the arrival of the stranger was the key event in the trailers. The skies are strange. By the way, I love that line. Mm-hmm. And, the coming of the comet and all this kind of stuff. And then we get there and he's laying there like a little Kal-El arriving from Krypton, laying there in the dirt. But obviously, a stranger falls from the sky, blah, blah. What are the best theories you've heard about who the stranger might actually end up being?
Okay, so the stranger theoretically would be one of the Astari, right? One of the kind of angels or wizards of this world.
And who might they be?
So if we are going to go with sticking to the timeline, right? If we want to be very, very straightforward with our Tolkien lore, then it's more than likely one of the blue wizards, who are very mysterious figures who were supposed to help with all the Sauron issues back in the day throughout the Second and Third Age. However, if we want to do this more of a callback to the movies, which is what, let's be honest, most people are familiar with the movies more than the books, then it could be Gandalf, it could be Radagast, be pretty cool.
Radagast was my first. When I first saw the trailer, my first guess was Radagast.
The Firefly thing, right?
Yeah.
But I believe, too, and correct me if I'm wrong, though, Gandalf's magic in particular, though, is very, very synonymous with, like, fire. And there are lines in the books about, like, being a being of burning. And so I think that comet kind of makes sense for him if we go that route. Again, that's a third age thing, but I don't think we need to be too precious about the various ages throughout this. They're working with what they have. They're working with the rights they have. And I think there's absolute room to take liberties here.
I mean, there was that one moment, because my thought is not Gandalf, but the one moment of it that there was certainly like sense of Gandalf was, you think back to when Gandalf was held in Saruman's tower, and he's got the moth, and the way he's speaking to the moth, I mean, this is very reminiscent of the way he was holding the firefly and kind of whispering to the firefly. I did totally see that. However, I personally right now, and I'm almost guaranteed to be wrong about this, I do not believe he is one of the wizards. I don't think he was going to be, because my first thought was kind of he's going to be the first of his kind in the world. Because, Gandalf, like you said, Gandalf's not technically supposed to show up till the third age.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, he's possibly maybe the first arrival of the wizards in there. But I actually don't think it is. Because every time I try to convince myself that he is, my mind just keeps going back to, Loki, King of the Elves. As the comet flies overhead and the leaf falls and the rot sets into the leaf, just like we're hearing about the deteriorating lands and all that kind of stuff. And I think I think the stranger's more connected to Sauron than he is connected to a Gandalf type.
He is Sauron the Deceiver.
I mean, yeah. And I'm kind of leaning that way right now.
I think that's fair.
Again, I don't know, but Rob, you seem to think you definitively have the answer as to who.
I don't definitively. I'm just saying
who do you think it is?
If you're making this show, and you're Jeff Bezos and you're going to spend $500 million or $750 million on this show, he's going to say, guys, you got to put Gandalf in this show. I'm just saying, like from a power star perspective, I need somebody. I'm spending all this money. Give me something, and you go into the second age. They've already messed up. I mean, we know that Galadriel's going to interact with someone that she's 1,500 years apart from in terms of her age, in terms of the timeline. So I don't think they particularly care. I think Gandalf, that's going to be their star power. However that works, because maybe Gandalf doesn't know who he is yet. So it's like,
when he's had many names too. When he first appears in Valinor, he's just the Wanderer, basically.
Absolutely.
I think Olinor, is that his name?
Well, and when he comes back after his thing with the Balrog, and he appears to why am I suddenly freezing? A Gimli.
Gimli.
Aragorn.
Even then, he was still a little bit aloof. But I think Elrond is your star power. I think Elrond and Galadriel are your star power. Now, you guys will most likely be right here, but right now I just don't think it's going to end up being
a fun and interesting theory. And just to piggyback off what you're saying, Rob, I'm not often going to be like, what good old Jeff Bezos did. I really like that he was like, hey, thank you for taking my notes, and thank you even more for ignoring them.
Right.
And I think that's a testament. If you're really good at what you do running a company, you don't always have the best insight to what to do with a television show. And I think that's admirable that Bezos was like, good on you for picking and choosing from me.
The one thing that I want to see from this show that I have not got yet is that in the Lord of the Rings movie, not in the series, not the books necessarily, because that from the very beginning that the Shire itself, the way of life of the hobbits, is really what the Battle of Middle-earth metaphorically is being fought over. The Shire represents all that's good in the world. And, every other place has very different iterations of good. But it's the Shire that's this idyllic thing that we're protecting. And that's why you couldn't have the scouring of the Shire in the movies. You couldn't do that the way the movies are set up. In this, I'm wondering, so Sauron's going to come back. What's the deal here? You've already shown us this gigantic battle that can happen in the Fellowship of the Ring. They show all the peoples of Earth come to fight Sauron at the end of the Second Age. Like, we know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But until
led by Elrond, apparently.
Right, exactly. So right now, though, are we going to watch all these people who join up with Sauron and this world of men joined up with Morgoth, or some of them? Like, I still don't know what the story for this show is. Is Galadriel just, well, I was right, Sauron's coming?
Well, I see. I would have agreed with you if we were still just talking about episode 1.
Right.
I feel like by the end of episode 2, I'm starting to see the formation of the story.
Absolutely, but 2 hours in.
I know. I agree. That's the problem with a lot of, like, even some of the great TV shows.
There's only 8
today.
episodes.
I do not like it when you got to tell somebody, now you got to get through the first 4 episodes. Like, I don't like that about me. Like, I miss the days of like Heroes. When like Heroes, first episode,
Off to
bang,
races.
done. You're in. You're invested. Like ready to go. You know, yada yada. I love the fact that the first episode of House of the Dragons, like, I'm in. Like, this is it right there.
And by the second episode too, you're drawn in even more.
Yeah.
And alliances are shattered. Others are being forged. I mean, you're really, I hate to say it. I mean, I think that House of the Dragon and Rings of Power, we now have 2 shows running concurrently that we can compare and contrast on a weekly basis. And it's going to be really interesting to do that. I think, if nothing else, from a storytelling perspective, what we're going to learn as all of us who are consumers of stories, and a lot of us want to tell stories, it's going to be really interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah. So as far as where I think the story's going, I think by the time the second episode ended, my head goes exactly to that opening of The Lord of the Rings, where Elrond, when you hear Galadriel talk about an alliance of elves and men, and like, I think what we're going to see, what I think the story of this is going to be, because we know it's going to culminate in that. That's where it culminates. So I think the story of this show is going to be the road to that, is taking this, they've laid it out for us out. You have men do not like elves, and elves do not like men. And the dwarves now are living in like under the mountain. By the way, how different does it look now than it does?
By the way,
It was so cool.
I wanted to say, you know, one of the things about Fellowship of the Ring too is when you go to the different realms, when you go to Rivendell or Lothlorien, you really felt a sense of wonder. And I was, the depiction of the dwarf realm, I was breathtaking.
It was gorgeous.
There's that one panning up shot where you see it reveals I was like, wow. I mean, okay. I that was truly a moment to me where I felt that like whoosh of wonder that you get sometimes when you're watching something. And I loved that. I thought, man, that was beautifully done.
And that brings up, that's a great segue into what I think was the strongest part of the first 2 episodes, because I will tell you right now, after 2 episodes of this, I am ready for an Elrond Durin spinoff show. Just who have to now live together in a human city as roommates, as an odd couple. Exactly, right? I loved, capital L, loved that as soon as they showed up to the mountain and they got, first of all, a little bit of Return of the Jedi in there. It's like, no. It's like I totally got that. Love that. But as soon as you got in, you see the world, the wonder of it, that they actually have to grow things under the mountain. The whole system of giant mirrors. Like just little details like that to give light to the place. It was, and their interactions, I just loved it. Like, actually, my heart broke.
I got so emotional.
When they're on the elevator, he finally turns to him and says, like, you missed my wedding.
The birth of my children.
Friends. You weren't there on the most important day of my life. You missed my wedding. You missed the birth of my children. And like the audacity of a fucking elf who gets to be immortal say, has it only been 20 years?
Yeah.
We don't get that long. Like that whole thing, and Elrond, instantly it registers with him. It's like, I've been a dick. Yeah. And then when we meet Durin's wife, who I could also watch an entire spin-off show of just Durin and his wife. That was like,
they're so in love.
Every time Durin would say, he's going, he's staying, he's going. Every time that she would say, he's staying, Anne would nudge me. It's like, yeah, like I know, this is how our fights go. I lose every time. But the conversation, the whole idea about that tree in their home is a sapling from the original 2 trees. And it could be, the reason it was able to grow is because when it's in an environment of love, it can grow. And I'm like, okay, this is gorgeous. Like, I loved watching that, feeling it. Even the whole little stories about like, why can they not just survive in, but thrive in like the mountains? And she's telling the stories like, we can sing to the stone and the stone will tell you what it is and what to do. And I'm like, all this mythology stuff is so freaking good. And then at the end, Durin goes to his own father, Durin the Third, I think. And this thing, and they open up the box. Okay, next mystery. I have two theories about what's in the box. So, judging by the glow, it's a very silvery kind of glow. So it's either they just now discovered, I always mispronounce it, Mithril?
Mithril.
Mithril. That they just now discovered Mithril. They've now discovered this metal that becomes like the most precious metal that they have. Of course, that Bilbo later wears and Frodo later wears and all that kind of stuff. So he's like thinking, now that we've discovered this metal will change everything. Now your elf shows up. Or, to twist things, one of the Cimmeril, which it shouldn't be, but you could bring that in. Are
they allowed to, though?
Well, I mean, the Cimmerils are mentioned in the show.
Right, I guess so.
Yeah, they're directly mentioned in the show, so it would have to be
3 of them.
So that there were 3 of them. Yes. So I mean, I honestly don't. It's probably most likely Mithril when you look at the color of the glow and everything, but could be something else. Did you have a theory about what was in the box?
I think it's the Mithril, because canonically that's what connects dwarves and elves ultimately, is the mining of that and them trading that with one another. So I feel like that makes the most sense, and especially right now since we're still unsure of the elves, maybe we're like, we're not going to give it to those guys with their pointy ears and their pointy shoes. We don't like them.
What did the one human call them? Pointy boot?
Pointy boots or something like that.
Wow, they were really creative with their
got him
ethnic slurs in the old Middle Earth.
Man,
pointy boot.
Pointy boot.
Did you have a theory when they started to open the box?
I think it has something to do with what Ving Rhames wants in the briefcase in Pulp Fiction.
You troll.
I thought it was Mithril too. I mean that's because I mean it is the dwarves. You know, I don't know why they would. I mean, they might have, but I have a Cimmeril. But I because that was in Morgoth's crown. The 3 Cimmerils, right, were in his crown.
I think.
I don't. But I
Infinity Stones.
I think it's going to have to be like that's what we're mining.
How faithful are they sticking to like the Numenorian like? Because that's where Mithril came from. That's why it's so rare. Because it sank with the island. But are they sticking to that, or are they not kind of?
Well, we don't know until we get there. Like
okay.
we know that they're going to arrive there next episode. Yeah. It looks like we're getting the introduction of that next episode. But that leads us then into the next part. Like when Celebrimbor, Lord Celebrimbor shows up, and it's like, okay. Because if you know, he is directly connected with the forging of the rings, and they start talking about this great forge that they want to create, and you're like, okay, I see where this is going. Now, if I'm not huge on that aspect of the written books of the lore, but I believe Celebrimbor is the one who actually, without Sauron, creates the Elven rings. I believe he's the one who creates and forges the 3 Elven rings.
Actually, I think he
kept
does.
them free of Sauron's corruptive power. I can't remember exactly.
And then Galadriel gets the ring of the water. She gets the ring of the.
I always mess it up.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so much to keep track of.
I really wanted to reread everything before the show came out, and that did not happen.
That's not going to happen. That's a long
it's a lot
bit
of reading, and we have a lot of TV right now.
But even as you're just getting into it, there is like little. I don't want to call them Easter eggs, but little glimpses into stuff that if you are, like, I think if you weren't somebody who's familiar with the Lord of the Rings stuff, you could probably come into this and get caught up.
Oh, absolutely.
But for anybody who is more familiar with some of the older stuff, there was a rich bunch of smatterings of Easter eggs around to get, first of all, just the introduction of the 2 trees, which to a lot of people just watching it, okay, there's a neat little bit of background, but the 2 trees are paramount in the importance of understanding the history of this world. So there was that. One of the ones that I thought was really clever was Finrod, Galadriel's brother, who in the source material, he, if I remember correctly, and Kris, you can correct me where I'm wrong here, but he's basically lured into a trap by Sauron. And then it's Sauron's wargs that like ultimately kill him. Now they don't show that in the show. But when Galadriel's standing over Finrod's body, you see the claw marks
Yes.
down his arm. It's just like
Such a good detail.
a lot of little things like that are smattered throughout the whole world that kind of gives a little bit of a connective tissue. And then, of course, the symbol of Sauron is on there as well. That comes into play immediately into it. And then, of course, you've got the kid who looks nothing like his mother. Theo, so who I'm assuming probably looks more like whatever his father looked like. But so he finds this shattered blade that's got the mark of Sauron in it. The only connection I can make is once the blood goes into it and it starts to reassemble, it's kind of like the opposite effect of the Nightblade. Because once, Strider picks up the Nightblade and it just goes, whoosh, it's like when the blood was going into the blade, the opposite effect was happening and it was coming. So I don't know if that's supposed to be a Nightblade or whatever. And then I saw somebody mention this to me, and I don't remember this at all. But the guy, speaking of the Nightblade, the guy that Galadriel ends up on the raft with is, like somebody says, I didn't know this at all, is ultimately going to become the Night King. Like he becomes one of the
corrupted
one
kings.
of the Nazgul. Like I'm like, what? So that's total news to me. I didn't know anything about that, so it might be
I
totally
didn't
wrong.
catch that
But
at all. Ooh.
I don't know. Were there any other like big little details that showed up in the episode that really stood out to you in the episodes?
I mean, we paused right when it was the constellations. And we're just
right.
checking that out of like, okay, hold on a second. Is this going to help us with our bearings of where we're at in the world right now? So then later on when the fireflies happened, we were like, shut up. We thought we were just being huge nerds. Because I thought that was just Logan and I having a little too much vodka. And then we were like, we were right. But that was the one that stood out. And then the warg moment, that detail was so great. I loved all of that. And then just the whole Durin line too, because that's who Gimli's connected to.
Yeah.
So his lineage is connected there. So every time you see a dwarf with a big red beard, you're just like, that's my guy. That's his Graham Crappy.
That's your dog.
That's my dog.
You would know this better than I would. In a song that should have won the Academy Award for Best Song at the Oscars, who's the redheaded Irish singer's name?
Annie Lennox?
No.
Oh, wait, no.
No, the dude.
The dude.
Ed Sheeran.
Ed Sheeran?
I See Fire.
Oh.
When he sings,
I thought we were talking about the Lord of the Rings song.
"Watching over Durin's sons." Which is this the Durin he's talking about, or was it Durin's dad, or was it one of Durin's descendants?
I mean, there's like, what, 4 of them?
Yeah, we're a long way from Gimli.
Yeah, we're a long
We're
way
way off
separated
from
from
Gim,
Gimli.
yeah.
So, who is Durin's sons? Were there any like moments like that stood out for you in the first couple of episodes?
No, I mean, I did enjoy, as I said, I liked all the elements and everything. I was just waiting for more of a narrative thrust to the whole thing, but I did enjoy, like you said, the world. I mean, I enjoyed seeing where they're putting all the pieces together, and it's like, look, this is an adaptation, so I was putting aside any expectations I had because there were so many things. They don't have the rights to the Silmarillion. They only have the rights to the appendices. And I understand what they're doing. It's just like we talked about, even in Lord of the Rings, it is not Arwen that rescues Frodo. It's Glorfindel. And like, it's just a different thing.
The Shire doesn't live happily ever after.
No, it does not. I mean,
movies,
people are like, you got to put the scouring of the Shire. Yeah, that would. Can you imagine if they did that at the end of Return of the King? We're going to re-release it. It's going to be the special, more stuff edition, like there with Spider-Man: No Way Home, and you're going to see the scouring of the Shire. Can you imagine that? I mean, it looks like the new Isengard, and there's Saruman and Grimtongue, and they're like, ha ha ha.
Just that vision was enough of the Shire burning. Everyone was like, how dare you?
Yeah, you walk back. Oh, I mean, can you imagine if you ended that series of movies with that? Let's do that.
But I gotta say, listen, they got back a lot of goodwill from me with episode 2.
Right.
But I to your point as well, I need to now see them, because I feel like I started to see it in episode 2, them starting to bring the story together. This is going to be about the forging of alliances of these different worlds and these characters who play such a big role that ultimately, if they make it this far, 5 seasons down the road, is going to culminate in the Great War with Elrond leading the charge and all that kind of stuff. But you need to show me in episode 3 continuing to assemble the elements now. You got to start giving us more of a clear path of, okay, where's the story going? What's this about? Because, we're talking about another show that just came out. Was it The Patient? The new Steve Carell show? Yeah. First episode, I get what this is. Now, I'm sure there's going to be twists and turns and revelations along the way, but right in episode 1, I know what this show's about. You know what I mean?
First 2 minutes of that show open
Yeah.
up so intense. Oh, it's so good.
It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I not to compare and contrast, but I can't help it. House of the Dragon does a really great job of giving you all these disparate elements, and you're understanding where everything is going, and you were understanding that from the first episode, and that's what draws you in and keeps you interested in the story. And even by the end of episode 2, I'm interested, but I'm still like, I'm not excited.
I am excited now, but I certainly wasn't in the first episode. But again, I would say you never like to compare, but we have 2 high fantasy shows of highly anticipated IP that are now airing at the same time. We're 2 episodes into both of them. It's fair to say that right now, for me, House of the Dragon is ahead of The Rings of Power right now. Now, that can change week to week.
Sure.
But as of right now, for me, House of the Dragon is a little bit ahead of this, but I'm excited to see where episode 3 goes. I hope I see more of that assembling of the story like we did in episode 2, rather than a lot of meandering that I thought we did in episode 1. That's where
fair.
I'm at right now. Anyway, guys, we've gone on about this long enough. We are now going to go over and hear from you guys and hear about your thoughts, ideas, what stood out to you, speculations that you have about moving forward. That's what we're going to do in the second half of this video. But before we get to that part, we want to take a second and thank one of the sponsors of this video, our friends at True Classic. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's episode, True Classic. This brand new sponsor has the absolute best fitting t-shirts that a man can buy. Finding the right t-shirt with a little bit of a dad bod is incredibly frustrating. Most t-shirts are either way too tight on your gut or look way too big and boxy. You're not in high school anymore, and it's time to upgrade. True Classic has already helped over 2 million men finally get a better fit at an affordable price. And the John Campea Show viewers and listeners get access to the best deal they offer. For a limited time only, get 25% off using the code CAMPEA at trueclassic.com. Look, you and I both know that almost all of men's t-shirts are designed to look good on skinny models with six-packs. But let's be honest, that's not most of us. True Classic tees taper off towards the bottom, but they fit tighter around the chest and shoulders. It's time to highlight your best attributes with a t-shirt that you can always confidently throw on. Like most of you guys, ever since college, I've always struggled to find proper fitting t-shirts that are comfortable. Well, True Classic, from the moment I put on the shirt they sent me, solves it. And True Classic doesn't just stop at tees. From polos and workout shirts with the same flattering fit. Upgrade your wardrobe with True Classic. Get 25% off at trueclassic.com with the promo code CAMPEA. Free shipping included on purchases over $100. 100% risk-free guarantee with a 30-day refund policy. Stay classy with True Classic. Your dad bod will thank you. And thank you to our friends at True Classic for giving me my favorite shirts and for being a sponsor of our channel. All right, guys, with that down, let's now move into your thoughts, comments, and questions about the first couple of episodes of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. So, Kris, what do we got?
Move this because Amy's taller than me, so I can't see over it. Okay. Sam Fisher. Oh, first, Jay Master sending some support. Thank you so much.
Jay Master.
From Sam Fisher. And I like that Nori, not the dwarf, has an adventure spirit like Frodo and Bilbo.
I am a sucker, and listen, lots of stories do this, where you have the world the way it is, then some younger person that's got visions. I mean, that's Luke Skywalker, right? I mean, that's a lot of these things. I love that you do have a character that's like that. And I love I am endeared to the character. Again, I'm not a big fan of the first episode, but I am endeared to the character about her whimsical desire for seeing the bigger world. And then when something very on the surface horrifying shows up, her things is like, no, we need to help this thing. I like that. I do. I like that. Let's see if they make something special out of the character or not. All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher, I really like the Harfoots, and they were able to toe the line to where you can see where hobbits get their behaviors, but the Harfoots are different.
There are, in the original books, there are 3 basic ancestral sub-races of them, and I cannot remember the names of them other than the Harfoots. There's the Harfoots, the something else, and the something else.
So the proud feet and the...
Yeah, so like the thing about the like you can also see some instantly distinct differences between Harfoots and Hobbits. Hobbits, like, they're clean, tidy, hobbit holes that they will nest in and be there for life. The Harfoots are more in tune with nature. They're a nomadic people. They're always on the move. What do they call it? A migration. Okay, is it time for the next migration? Okay, let's up and go. So you see a lot of the similarities, but you see a lot of the differences too. And so I kind of like the way they've done that. Again, I still love that line. They put it in the trailer. I'm glad they did. Just the skies are strange. ouch. I love that line. It's a really cool line. All right, what's next?
From Cody Carroll. In episode 2, do elves not need CPR after passing out in the water? They both just popped right up after he saved her from the anchor/rope.
You know, I am still a little unclear about the immortality of elves. Like, are elves... I mean, look, we already know elves are physically stronger. Elves they're certainly more graceful, and there's a mystical element just about them. But I mean, you stab them through the heart, they die, right? It is
When a wampa knocks you on your ass, you survive.
so. I mean, whether you look at the Lord of the Rings in the books, the original movies, whatever, I've always been a little bit unclear where are those limits with them? Like, you're right. She's under the water. I'm assuming if she stayed there permanently, she drowns and dies. But is an elf thing that the moment you get them back into air, boom, they're right. I mean, I just don't know. They've never been really clear on this. So I don't know. Maybe the show will tell us. Maybe it won't.
It always just feels like unnatural death is what can come for them, right? Like, so like dying of old age is not their thing, but getting stabbed, yeah.
So how does that apply to other situations? Like
Going getting water
30
in your
feet
lungs
underwater and then
you
being
just
brought
cough
up out
up
of
that
the
water
water.
and then you're like, okay.
Yeah, so that's
Neat.
the thing.
Also, we're in COVID times. You can't do CPR. They were like,
Yeah, come on.
They were like, COVID protocol. Our actors are not going to touch the mouth.
Stranded at sea doesn't mean you abandon and suddenly become like a complete savage. All right, what's next?
So from Sam Fisher again, and that cow milking sludge, creepy and awesome. Ooh.
Again, and I completely believe, I might turn out to be wrong, but I think and probably a lot of you guys think too, that is all connected with the dying grasses, the comet showing up, the leaf falling, the what's the word they use in Lord of the Rings for it? The corruption of the earth itself.
Yes.
Is happening. So, but yes, when you squeeze that in the sludge, I grimaced. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, no, it was good.
I grimaced. Yeah. Okay, what's next?
From the Everything Entertainment Network, the days of war are over. Why would you proclaim that, High King? You know that leads to another war.
Look, we've had world leaders in our history stand on top of military things saying, mission accomplished.
Yep.
And only for that thing to go on for
go.
another 10 years. So, I mean, it happened. But you know what? There was a really interesting conversation that happens between the Elf King and Elrond afterwards. It says, look, we know that the same wind that can blow out a fire can also cause the fire to spread. And it's almost like he's no fool. Like he believes Sauron is still out there somewhere. But it's like he believes that going out there chasing after him is only going to exacerbate the problem. And he thinks the best thing right now is to let sleeping dogs lie. We know how that turns out because we have the gift of hindsight. But I still thought that was a very interesting conversation between Elrond and... Because it means ultimately Elrond is kind of lying to Galadriel. He's lying to her. Like, he knows that the king knows, but he's not letting Galadriel know that. So I think that's going to come back to bite him in the ass a little bit later.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher, well, Dreg, proof or it didn't happen. Bronwyn, you want proof? Here's a fucking orc head.
I loved that moment. She just walks in, boom. If you want to live, we leave in the morning. I love that there wasn't any more thing. It was just the hard cut, the edit of that whole scene was perfectly done too.
Oh,
just
yeah.
The bang on the thing. I dug that a lot.
It was so
good.
well done. And her just jumping into action too once Theo was threatened was so great. And then him jumping off the balcony and trying to choke the orc. Oh, I loved it.
Dug the scene.
Great.
Dug it. All right, what's next?
From Daniel Vacura, Elrond and Durin work very well together. It's a lazy trope to cut away from what Galadriel's bro told her and reveal it later. That scene could be cut too.
Yeah, but here's the worst part of that moment. Like, yeah, that is a common trope, but it's a trope for a reason because it can be effective, right? It can be effective. Here's the problem I had with it in that moment. It wasn't applicable. Like if he had leaned into her, if they cut to when he leans and whispers into her ear and we hear him say, you know the difference when the gold in the water does this. And then she looks at the light and then looks back at the water and sees the gold in the water doing whatever her brother said. Then that becomes applicable. But him talking, I can't hear, oh yeah, you know once you've touched the darkness. It's not like there's anything happening in that moment that would suddenly make that relevant. Like that's the problem I had with that one moment was that it didn't apply.
Yeah. There's a lot. I had a lot of problems too with a lot of this dialogue, the way people were talking to each other. You know, and they were talking sometimes in platitudes. When just say what you mean, man. Just tell me what you mean.
Often that is how elves
That's
talk.
how they
though.
talk.
I know, but
That's how they talk in the
That
book.
is consistent with the books and the
it's
and the
true,
movies.
but they could still like dial it back a bit. I mean, just we understand.
So you didn't like the line when he says the wind that seeks to put out the fire?
No,
cannot
I
follow-"
did like
I
that
love
because the light that burns twice as bright burns half as long. I mean,
Yeah.
I love those, and I feel like that was that was a Blade Runner line. But yeah, it's fine. Those are cool. Those are brief bump lines, which I like. But some of the stuff, the way they like, I did not like the scene where the opening scene with little Galadriel talking to her brother, and I'm like, dude, come on, man.
It's
Oh, wow.
poetic AF, and I am here for it.
I got to side with Kris on that one. I actually thought that whole first 15 minutes to me was the only good thing about that first episode. I thought that first 15 minutes worked really well. Oh, whatever. All right, what's next?
From K Major, sending in a $20 super chat.
Thank you, K Major.
I had no issues with the dialogue, particularly the elves.
Well,
Great timing. Elves always spoke in sort of an intellectual, snooty way. The only conversation that kind of made it noticeable was between Elrond and Galadriel. Aren't they friends?
Yeah, but I still think that's how they talked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when he came to her with the 2 cups to celebrate that she gets to go into the West and all that kind of stuff, I again, this is a second episode thing, but I really, really liked it.
but also what we don't see is that, I mean, you've got to imagine the elves, if there's one crazy amongst them, it was Galadriel, because she's been looking for Sauron for how long? You know, that was another thing, you know, she's got this army it's not even army, call it what would
Company.
you call it? A company of troops. Why are they bitching at her? They've been searching for Sauron for how many years now? And like, we have to go back. Wait, you're going to go back now?
Well,
As
yeah,
opposed to
no, the reason I thought they made that very clear. The reason they were bitching out is because every other commander has given this up. Everybody else has gone home, and now we've gone past the markers that the king said we could go. So it makes sense that now they're saying,
Of
"Hey,
course,
listen,
of course.
this is enough. We got to go back."
Cut to, we're standing in front of this castle we've been looking for. You know, I mean, that's the only thing. I mean, it was weird that I understand they had to have dissension in the ranks, but it would have been nice, because imagine Elrond's like, how long has she been looking? Decades, you know, and she was
Centuries.
they probably talk behind her back in Elfland all the time because she's nuts.
But
She's
that's why the
obsessed.
king. But see, that's why when Elrond and the conversation between Elrond and the king comes out, it reveals why. Because Elrond says to him, he's chosen to honor you instead of reprimand you.
Right.
We find out why.
Well,
Because
that I
the king-
liked. I mean,
the king knows she's right, so he's given her a lot of leeway. And
well, he needs her.
well, I think he knows he needs her, even though he's sending her off into the West. But that's the one thing I like about the king, because in that way, the king stops becoming that one trope where the head of the government is actually kind of incompetent and whatever, because he's like, look, I know I can't really reprimand her for breaking my rules because I actually secretly know she's right, so I get it. But I need to send her into the West because she's going to cause problems.
Well, and that's part of the whole prophecy, right? Like, she will bring about the shadow. So that's part of it, too. It was like, yeah, she's probably right, but get her the hell out of here. We don't need that shadow with us.
All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher. The highlight for me was indeed Elrond and Durin.
Yeah.
There was so much of Legolas and Gimli there.
I could watch that. I think that's when I realized it. As soon as episode 2 started, I was enjoying it more than episode 1,
Right.
which was
Well, it's more entertaining.
not difficult to do. But still, but it's when Durin and Elrond got together and started talking, even when they were having their contest of breaking the stones, which, how much, do you get a little flashbacks of Dark Crystal in there a little bit?
Yeah.
But that's the moment that I went, okay, not only is this significantly better than the first episode, I'm really enjoying this now, which I had waited an hour and a half to do, but it finally, I loved them. I hope we get more of them through the series. I really do. All right, what's next?
From Daniel Vacura. I like the show, but still feel they haven't done a great job of making you care about many characters. Durin had charisma on screen, a lot don't. Certain combos feel like they could be edited down.
I am going to, for the most part, agree with you on that. I listen, I am not yet attached to Galadriel. I think they've done a great job of showing she's a little crazy. She's self-obsessed. They've shown us her flaws, and I get that. And I think I think we're supposed to grow along with her. So I'll give them that. But Durin, definitely. Elrond, definitely. But I found, I already forget the Harfoot's name.
Nori.
I found her charming, but I'm not attached to her yet.
Right.
I will kill for her.
Her best friend Poppy.
Poppy.
I find her charming, but
Love her.
I'm not attached to her.
I'll die for the Harfoots.
The stranger, I'm curious about him. Not super into him. The Elf King, I think, can be a very interesting character in this thing, but I'm not attached to him. I agree. We're 2 episodes in, and other than Durin and Elrond, I'm not really attached to any of the characters, and we're 2 hours in.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something they have to pick up the pace with a little bit, I think, going into the next couple of episodes, is we got to get on board with these characters. Because, again, I'll go back to Heroes. Peter Petrelli, on board with him right away. House of the Dragon, Rhaenyra, right away. I loved her. I mean, so they did a better job. Actually, all the characters I got completely invested in. They need to do a better job of that moving forward if this thing is going to be to the level of House or exceed House of the Dragon. They've got to do a better job of it, no doubt. All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher, 1 of 3. To be honest, the weakest part for me was Galadriel. It seems she's our main character, but the, quote, only soldier who believes the enemy is still alive trope has been done so many times. These episodes didn't really do anything to make her stand out and differentiate her from the other soldiers in that trope. But I do like that she has said she has PTSD by saying, being in a peaceful place will not quiet the peace in me.
Oh,
I do love that line.
I love her introspection. I think she's one of the things that has happened as a result of her conversation with the king and Elrond. I think she's starting to recognize that, okay, she believes Sauron's out there still, but she's been bloody obsessed with it and putting other people. I love when Elrond says, okay, fine. Yeah, let's say we let you go out north. How many more elves have to die out there just because you're doing it? And I think that's when I think it finally might have clicked for her. It's like, oh yeah, my obsession is killing people. But I agree. I can see where they want to go with her. And when we look at the Peter Jackson films, we know where she ends up being, like as far as a person. But I mean, it's a long show. I get it. Don't make the transformation happen right away. I get it. But you got to get me more invested in her because I'm not tremendously invested in Galadriel at this point. Even if I think they had to do some pretty interesting things. Again, I love the whole stuff at the sea, in the sea and in the water. I did love all that stuff, but I'm not invested in her yet. And you're right. They have kind of put her forward right now as kind of in an ensemble cast, she's the main character. And she's the one I'm not getting attached to. That's a problem. That's a problem that they got to address. All right. What's next?
Because Durin has main character energy.
He really does.
I love him
He really
so much.
does.
Cinema reviews. I do agree the first episode was a bit slow and the second was better, but I still really enjoyed it. It was awesome to experience them in a movie theater.
Oh, I'm glad you got to do that. Again, me too. Like it just, I'm sure on home, it still would have looked beautiful, I'm sure. But yeah, to reflect what you were saying there, Rob, I instantly felt like I was back in Middle Earth. Like just aesthetically, I just felt like we're here, especially once you go into the mountain. Like once you go into that mountain, you're just like, oh my God, this is gorgeous and beautiful. And oh, I did love that. All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher, John, to be honest, for me, episode 1 was not that slow. At least not any slower than the Lord of the Rings books. And my God, are those things a slog until the prancing pony. Yes.
Okay, no, listen, and you're right. And a lot of people have brought up that to me. It's like, listen, the Lord of the Rings books is slow. Yeah, but it's a different medium, right? It's a different medium. And in a different medium, you can, like, I can go through 4 pages describing the grass on a hill. I can do that in a book, in a medium. I don't want 4 minutes on screen of us beholding the beauty of grass on a hill. So there's a little bit of a difference there.
Also, I'd have to say, when I read Lord of the Rings, back in actually 6th grade, I'd never encountered anything like that before.
It was the first thing it was the first genre thing I'd ever read too. Well, The Hobbit was for the first one for me.
Yeah, and so now, back then, it was like every description, I was like, whoa, put the zap on my head because I was young. So everything was new to me. Now, if you tried to read Lord of the Rings, I think it would be more of a slog because we're all so familiar with not just Lord of the Rings, but everything else that sprang from it.
Yeah. Well, this is what Amy talked about on the main show today, is that this was the blueprint for all fantasy that we know and love now. So then how do you adapt it and how do you play with the pacing that we're now all familiar with? But to me, it's like, I've brought up this comparison before. It's like watching Dune. People I know who love the Dune books are like, the pacing of this is perfect, Kris. Why would you want this to move any faster? I'm like, oh, okay, that's fair, because that's how I feel about this, is this feels like reading the book to me.
All right. What's next?
From K Major sending in a $20 super
Thank you,
chat.
K Major.
Major.
It's taken me over 12 hours to watch the show because my Amazon Prime Video keeps crashing.
Oh.
I like what I'm seeing so far. I did enjoy the first episode. Second episode was better. Disney needs to take notes. 40+ minute episodes.
I mean, yeah, like, oh, heaven forbid if the first episode was the first 2 episodes, was 2 30-minute
man.
episodes. Heaven help them. But yes, like, hey, again, something like She-Hulk, the 30-minute format, I get it. You just got to make sure you're doing the show right so that it fits properly in the 30-minute format. But this 35-minute episode thing, 41-minute episode thing, not good enough. Take note. Look at what HBO Max is doing so well. Look at what Amazon Prime is doing so well. Yeah, I hope they do take note. All right, what's next?
From K Major again. Any standout characters for you? I like Galadriel. Nori seems annoying. I would never want to be her friend. Always getting me in trouble. Who wants that? Ooh, K Major, you and I would not get along. I'm a Nori. I want to go eat berries and not listen to people.
Man, I'll tell you right now, for me, the face of the show is actually Elrond. For me, because not only, I mean, when you really look at it, Elrond now is that connective tissue between he has the prime relationship with Galadriel. Galadriel doesn't even really listen to him, but listen to him more than anybody else. He's got the prime relationship with the dwarves and Durin. We see he's got the prime relationship with the king. And then we see him now is connected to Celebrimbor, right? So he's kind of the nexus of the show right now. And honestly, I'm really digging him as a character. Most when he's with Durin, but I am really, really liking Elrond a lot right now. Do you guys have any particular character that you would say this is the one I'm enjoying most when I'm watching them?
Well, I think you're right about that in the sense that, Elrond seems like the person that I would follow. I mean, okay,
Right.
of all these characters, that's the guy I would go with. Whereas Galadriel, I mean, even though she's right, she's obsessed. She's out of her mind.
Yeah.
She's a little crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that because she's a woman. I want to be, she's an elf.
Thank you for comforting me.
I just want to, but I mean, she's crazy obsessed with vengeance or revenge. I mean, I kept thinking to myself,
She's got lessons to learn.
she's got, and let's say she went into that castle and found Sauron with her little band. Then what was she going to do?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
best.
we've now
Her best.
I mean, we've located.
That's all you can ask them, Rob, is their
that's
best.
true. That's all I can say. We've located this castle. I found this thing. I would have got the hell out of Dodge. But they're wandering around in this castle like, maybe Sauron's here. Maybe the great evil's here. Like, what? Yeah, how many? There's only, and then you could have got taken out by a wampa. Pardon me, a snow troll.
There you go.
And a lot of them did. And it's like, this proves that this is not a good strategy. I mean,
That's fair.
My guess is they
fair.
probably would have gotten out of Dodge and tried to get back, but I don't know. Hopefully they would have had a plan.
yeah.
You know.
All right. Do you
I-
have a particular character?
I do love Nori. I
was
think
gonna
she's
say, yours is probably
precious.
Nori.
I think, well, that's just because also I am a hobbit. I know this about myself. If I were to be any character in Lord of the Rings, I'm absolutely Pippin. So I appreciate these characters. But Elrond is the glue right now, holding everything together. He makes me like Galadriel more when he interacts with her.
yeah.
Doing
Actually,
that,
you're right. That's
like,
a good point.
Their relationship makes me trust and like her more and give her a little more grace. I really think that's a really tremendous thing when you can do that with a character going, just by knowing this person, I trust and believe you a little bit more. So I think he's doing wonderful work.
All right. What's next?
From Suthius, Galadriel is why I sometimes fantasize about elves. Okay. Hey, that's fair, man.
And you know what? Maybe I should cut the Galadriel character a little bit of slack, because one of the things that the opening scene really does thing is that Finrod was her world. Like, he was everything to her as her older brother. And it really is a beautiful shot as she's standing over his body, the stoic face and just the tear. Like that, she's broken. Like, she is damaged goods right now. And there's a lot of stuff that she's got to process. And like we said, she's got things to learn along the way. I just think that in fiction, we have met characters like that, but have also the writers have been able to get us attached to them a little bit more. And so I just hope they're able to do that moving forward. All right, what's next?
From Stubble McShave, I wonder if the stranger is a blue wizard. Gandalf arrived 1,000 years into the Third Age. According to the peoples in Middle-earth, the blue came earlier. Yes, they came in the Second Age.
There are a number of people online speculating that he's a blue wizard.
Yeah. It would
And-
make sense,
And it would fit. I'm still leaning. To me,
Canonically.
it doesn't explain, though, the corruption stuff that's happening and all that. So I am still like the Fireflies dying around him. So I'm still leaning more either either Sauron or somebody connected to Sauron, or I don't know. I'm sure we'll find out in the coming episodes. All right, what's next?
From 1253 Sir 3. I gave up halfway through episode 1. The dialogue is so stilted and cringe-making.
I can't blame you, because I just told you that when episode 1 ended, I contemplated just going home. I saw it, for those of you who missed the first part, I saw it in a theater, and where they showed us the first 2 episodes. And when the first episode ended, I had given a quick thought to leaving. So I can't blame you, because I was a little bit there myself. All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher. Were those Ents, horns, or Entwives at episode 1's end?
I think they were Ents. I think Ents.
Yeah.
By the way, if you look at, I mean, I could be wrong about this, but it looks like the Watchtower Elf Brigade, it looks like they have Ents on their armor. At least that's what it looked like to me. So we'll visit them again, I'm sure. All right, what's next?
From Sidious Swift. Besides my eyes being glued to the screen when Galadriel was on, I loved both episodes. Solid, and left me excited for what's next.
Hey, listen, Sidious, you're not the only one I've heard say that. I have my own particular feelings about episode 1. I've heard from a lot of people that are like, John, I don't know what you're talking about. I thought it was great. And that's great. I mean, that's awesome. I kind of wish I felt the same way. The big question now is, where do we go from here? And that's what but I'm stoked that you liked it that much. But let me go back to the Ents for a second. I want to ask you guys a question. The Ents, as portrayed by Peter Jackson in the movie, are significantly different than the way the Ents are portrayed in the books.
Yeah, the whole slow moving.
When we meet the Ents in Rings of Power, are they going to be more like the Ents in the books, or do you think they're going to be more like the Ents in the Peter Jackson movie? What do you think?
I think like the movies.
You think they're probably stick more
I think
people
so.
are familiar with that?
Well, and also, I mean, just from a performance standpoint, I think it makes more sense to have a slow moving, kind of hollow sounding creature, because they're wooden and they have roots and they like to stick around in one place. Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe an amalgamation of the two, because I think, can you imagine if the Ents are all talking to each other, how long that conversation's going to take?
Visually, that was pretty cool. They just stand there. They're just all kind of swaying. We've just finished saying hello or something like that. All right.
Episode 8. We're still saying hello.
Yeah.
We're still saying hello. All right. What's next?
From Jason Bryden. My overall feeling about the show so far is it's a good start, but man, the elves are super unlikable outside of Elrond and Galadriel. And outside of Galadriel, their haircuts are rather strange.
I mean, yes, but that to me is fitting. I think their way to everybody else around them is pretty dickish, right? I mean, even if you look in Peter Jackson's things, like, yeah, there's a bit of a wonder about the elves, but also, they are snooty. That's the way they come across. They have absolutely a superiority complex.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
They talk constantly in the Peter Jackson films about the failings of men and how man is to blame for all of this. They think very, very highly of themselves. So it makes sense that they're kind of twatty.
Yeah. At least they come across like that if you're any other race.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher. What was strange to me is that episode 2 opening credits didn't have any of the cast. It was only crew, like EPs, directors, VFX soups, editors, and music.
I didn't notice.
I didn't notice that either.
I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I completely, unless it's Peacemaker, I completely tune out opening credits.
I kept just being like, it's pretty.
Yeah, I mean, that's about it. But now that you've mentioned it, I'm going to have to go back and tune that in again and take a look at that. If that is true, can you guys think of any other shows that have done that open with the credits of like everything except cast? It's interesting.
That
All
is
right,
interesting.
What's next?
From Lynn, I liked the 2 episodes, but I didn't love them. The actors were great, though, and I loved all the maps showing each land.
The one of the things that they did do well, and I'll give them credit in this in episode 1 as well, they made the world feel big.
Yes.
And I think that one little mechanic of like, not just saying, okay, now let's see the next shot and put up Ellenhorn or whatever. No, they put an overlay of the map, semi-transparent, and you see the movement across the whole world. So it felt like a big world. And a lot of shows and movies kind of failed to do that
I
sometimes.
totally agree with you.
Yeah,
Exactly.
actually, that's true. Might be helpful there too.
And the Muppets make traveling by map look really easy.
Yeah.
So good on
Indiana
them.
Jones style.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones style. All right, what's next?
From Suthius, I love the Dwarven theme when Elrond enters.
Oh yeah, the everything about it, like audibly, visually, everything about that. As soon as you walk, and I love the idea of that, just this little door. You go through this little door and you're in this world all of a sudden. But that tells you a lot about the dwarves. Their world is big. They don't care much about stuff that's outside the mountain. And so the entry and exit is just this little thing.
Well, and why should it appeal to you, outsider?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. I like that. All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher. Did you catch that one of Durin's sons was named Gamli? Not Gimli, but Gamli. I think you need to change your dog's name to Kris to Gamli, Durin's son. How dare you, Sam?
Gamli, son of Durin.
I'm going to rename my 11-year-old dog? No. He already has axe toys. His name is Gimli, son of Gloin. Gosh darn it.
By the way, we never did see the kids without the masks on, did we?
No.
Okay,
We just
so-
saw them running around being
I
like,
know,
"Ah!"
which was kind of fun. I do want to
loved
see
it.
that. I want to see that. All right, what's next?
From Suthius. Y'all ever had snails? I've had plenty in Cambodia. Tossed it in with some lemongrass. So good. Made my ass snail to the toilet many a times, but worth it.
Tell you what,
But did they use sour cream when they ate them?
Ugh.
I have never had, what do they call it here? Escargot.
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 I have never had escargot.
It's good.
To me, it's like mushrooms. But
Yeah.
if you don't like mushrooms, then you won't like that.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of mushrooms either. But I remember when I was a teenager working in a restaurant, Chicago style, and I worked on the pizza side of the kitchen because we had the regular Italian food side of the kitchen, the pizza side of the kitchen. And one of the things you could order as a topping, no, sorry, not as a topping, but for whatever reason you could order as a side, and they kept it over with the pizza toppings, was snail, was escargot. I didn't even like handling it. I don't know. So yeah, she's like pulling the damn thing out of the shell going, It reminded me a lot of a kid watching Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Monkey brains.
When they started eating much of it and the baby snakes, I'm like, oh my God, no. I did not like it. Did not like it at all. All right. Nori's terrible. Instantly don't like Nori.
Every time they said her name at the beginning, though, I did keep going, Seaweed? Her name's Seaweed? And then once they said Eleanor, I was like, okay, I get you.
All right, what's next?
Stubble McShave. I felt there was no hook in the story so far. I found the Elrond Galadriel conversation almost painfully boring to watch. Two things I liked. Elrond and Durin's house and the mystery of the stranger.
Yeah, I personally, I know I focused most of my time talking about things I didn't like about episode 1, but one of the things that I really did enjoy all the conversations between Elrond and Galadriel. It felt like the conversation of two individuals who've been friends for nearly 2,000 years. There was something about that I really enjoyed, and I never thought of it this way, Kris, till you brought it up. I think what little I do like Galadriel, it's because of those conversations with Elrond. But again, I'm in complete agreement with the Elrond Durin relationship. I'm curious about the mystery of the stranger. I'm not all on board with it yet, but I'm at least curious. All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher. Why does a stone sink and a ship float? Density and surface area. It's called physics, Finrod. Well, that's a sick burn, Sam
because
Fisher. I love you.
A stone only looks down. That's why. One thing I wanted to say, Kris, about the show is J.A. Bayona directed both of these episodes. And I do think these episodes are beautifully
They're
staged.
stunning.
I mean, there's just some really great, from the camera angles to the shot choices to, I really do. He did like a movie, A Monster Calls, and he is a great director. And so from that standpoint, I think the show's terrific.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the whole thing about TV and film, right? Is that even if something doesn't appeal to you, there is something you can cling on to where you go, I can appreciate that, or I can see the merit in this. And boy, howdy, can you see where the budget went on this? Because it is just a visual feast.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike the show.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see where it goes. I just find that the structure of the storytelling is odd to me in terms of a pacing standpoint.
All right, what's next?
A duck floats.
That's because they don't look down.
That's right.
Yeah. From Tim Platt. Honestly, the only thing I actively disliked were the young Harfoots. The doing something stupid in the name of adventure trope is my meet you on death point.
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of my life philosophy, though, guys. So,
But what I will say in defense of that, even though I thought that was a scene that was drawn out way too long and outlived its usefulness. But listen, the reality is we can call it a trope all we want. If I looked back as an adult on the things me and my friends did between the ages of 8 and 12, I would have a heart attack.
Oh yeah.
Like,
You did.
I mean, I literally did. But I mean, looking at that, I would. I mean, the thing. Like, I'm thinking right now. There's a place called. There's a waterfall that was by where we lived. We climbed down. It was the stupidest thing. But that's what we did. But we all did with our friends. We all did. Now, this is before the age where parents would put their children on leashes and can track them wherever they are because of their cell phone.
We were talking about this earlier today.
Were you?
Yeah.
But I mean, so it was before that age. But I mean, come on, that's what kids do. And it's what we did as kids. It's what our kids will do. It's just what they do, man.
It was character building.
Yeah, there's a little character building. Again,
Right.
the scene was still too long, though. And it got so it's frustrated me. But the fact that they would do it, pretty understandable.
My parents would hand me an inner tube and be like, go hang out in the creek with your friends. And we'd
Yeah.
just go like on the Brandywine River for hours with no adult supervision and just be reckless
Yeah, when I
and
was growing
horrible.
up, it was the parents would say, go outside and play.
Yeah.
They didn't much care where.
No.
Right,
Go-
right.
Come back when the street lamps come on.
Yeah, yes, when
That's
the
it.
street lights
That's
come on
it.
is when you got to be home.
Come
Yeah.
home for dinner.
That's it. So we did some crazy things.
I ended up in the canyons of the Burbank Hills all the time as a fifth and sixth grader, just going into those random canyons in the Burbank Hills.
We do unsafe
Just how did I get
things.
here?
All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher. What I love about Rings of Power is that there are so many plot lines that a couple of times when they move to another area, I went, oh yeah, this thing, etc.
I'm not quite sure what he means by that.
There's so many different stories that they'd move on to another one and go, oh yeah, I forgot about
Oh,
this.
Right.
Yeah, which actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Sam, because at one point I kind of wondered, instead of meeting everybody right away, maybe we should have met 2 or 3, stuck with them a bit, then moved on. But you know what? There's a drawback to that too, because if you do what I'm suggesting, which is start with 2 or 3, do like 2 or 3 episodes of that, then go on to other characters, then I'll be complaining. We just spent 3 episodes me getting attached to these characters, and now suddenly they're gone for 2 or 3 episodes. Like, I don't know, Book of Boba Fett. It's like, hey, where's Boba Fett? I don't know, maybe. So I don't know. Maybe I need to think about it. But it makes it feel, when you got so much going on so quickly, it does feel a little bit convoluted, even though it's slow. But look, I'm not going to pretend like it's an easy puzzle to unsolve. It's not. But you see House of the Dragon do it well, so you just kind of want it to do it well too. All right, what's next?
To be fair, I was asking myself, where is Boba Fett in this?
Yeah,
Constantly.
where's Boba
Yeah,
Fett?
Boba Fett, where? From Mike's Movie Madness. These first 2 episodes were great. I thought the pacing of the episodes worked well, and the second episode just kept the ball rolling. I kind of have a feeling the man from the sky is Gandalf.
You're not alone, Mike. You're not alone. I've read a lot of people online that are absolutely convinced it's Gandalf. Rob made the case for why it could be, and there's a lot of legitimacy to it.
What if he says, a wizard is never early. He arrives precisely when he means to.
He arrives precisely as a comet.
Yeah, I mean, so again, Mike, you're not alone in that, and you very well. Again, I'm leaning more towards a darker figure, but you guys will probably end up being right on that. All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher. I think the stranger is Gandalf, but after the thing with the fireflies, maybe it's Radagast. But it's probably a wizard because isn't Sauron on Earth already?
I don't know if Sauron is or not. Wait, sorry, I was thinking of Saruman. Yeah, Sauron's, but I mean, that could just be him have shot himself from one place in Middle Earth to another. I mean, listen, this comet didn't come, boom, it came streaking across the sky. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways they could be approaching that. So we'll see. I mean, again, it may not be Sauron, but maybe it's an agent of Sauron, something to plant chaos in the world of elves and men and dwarves and Harfoots. But we'll see. All right, what's next?
From Abraham Ruiz. Man, I really wish I saw this in a theater. Those visuals at the start were so good. Definitely see why it may feel slow in episode 1. Didn't for me as much.
Yeah, again, I've heard from a lot of people that said, well, I mean, John, and listen, I acknowledge I am more sensitive than other people to something being really slow at the start. Like, that bothers me more than it does most people. So just because that did for me, that doesn't mean it's going to be for you. And I've heard from yourself and others say that hey, they thought the pacing of the first episode was perfectly good. Great. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just simply explaining why it felt slow to me. But I'm glad that you enjoyed it on that level. All right, what's next?
From Tim Platt. I liked episode 1 for the most part, but yeah, it started to feel dull with about 20 minutes left. Thankfully, the second one was great.
Yeah, look, it's hard for me to describe how grateful I was when the second episode very clearly was superior to the first one, because I like I said, I was almost ready to tap out. I was almost ready to say, nope, I've had enough. This was thanks for putting it on. It looked beautiful on screen, but this ain't for me. But thankfully, like very quickly, the improvement became clear. And then you got into the Elrond Durin stuff, and yeah, I ended up having a really good time. All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher, what do you think Durin has in that box?
Oof.
I don't think it's mithril, because why would the dwarves think that the elves would covet it? Maybe the Cimmerils?
Well, I mean, for if the metal is everything that even Peter Jackson's movies suggest it is, it could be a game changer in the balance of power in a world.
And if it's something they just found, they just mined, and they realize that this, whatever this is, it has qualities that we've never seen before. It's impenetrable, and it's not like whatever else we've been pulling out of the ground. So they know whatever it is, it's meaningful and it's new and it's interesting, and this could be a game changer. They know. I
mean, look at with all the even elves walking around big heavy armor, right? A cave troll literally stuck Frodo and it didn't pierce. I mean, it's light, incredibly strong. I mean, it would be a power shifter in a world like that. Again, it may not be mithril. I'm just saying that's why it could be. So, all right, what's next?
From the Everything Entertainment Network. I liked them overall, but they felt too sluggish, almost like they could have combined them and trimmed the fat to make a better single episode.
I thought the second episode was completely great the way it was, but I definitely thought the first episode was very sluggish, like overbearingly so, to the point that I almost quit. Sluggish, but like for me, I didn't feel that in the second episode. In the second episode, I felt the pacing was all addressed. That whole issue about make the point you're trying to make in the scene and then move on to the next shot, and I felt like they did that in the second episode, whereas I didn't feel like they did that in the first. All right, what's next?
From Sam Fisher, I think the man on the ship at the end was Isildur. No, that is a different actor.
But we didn't even see the person on the ship.
Oh, the person looming. I thought you meant on the raft with them.
No, yeah.
Okay, I was like, no. Okay.
No, because there's, like, Galadriel kind of looks up. There's a ship there. We see a figure. I mean, we know Isildur is going to be a part of this.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it would also tell us, like, okay, we know this happens at the end of the Second Age, but we don't know how close to the end of the Second Age. Is it 300 years until the end of the Second Age? But if that's Isildur, because we know they're going to go to Numenor, right? At least that's what it looks like is going to happen, because we've seen the trailers, them on a ship sailing into Numenor, and all that kind of stuff. If it is Isildur, then that tells us a lot about the rest of the series. Then we know this entire rest of the series, which has to culminate in the battle against Sauron and his forces, it has to take place within 10 to 15 years of showtime, right? So that's a lot shorter, because this is a show that could span 300-400 years if they wanted to. But if that's Isildur now we're meeting, then it's got to be in the next 15 years or so.
Well, it feels like it's going to be that tight timeline, because they did hire an actor too to play Isildur who's about 25 years old. Right. So if it's by season 5, we are coming to where Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings set us up, it probably is, gaps of 5 years or so.
All right. And was that it?
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Okay. Sorry. You don't usually let it go to the top. All right. What's
From
next?
Tim Platt, it's official. Dwarves are my favorite part of any Lord of the Rings series. Added some much needed charisma and energy to the show.
You know what? I got to say this too. I know going into the series, I heard some people complaining about, well, dwarf women are supposed to have beards. Even if you go into the original source material, that's like mentioned once or twice, and then entire tomes where it's never brought up or mentioned. So was that a difference from like the original stuff? Sure. But you're lying to yourself and everybody around you if you think it's an important difference. I mean, there are more significant differences and changes they make. Certainly in the Lord of the Rings movies, they made much bigger and more significant differences.
And maybe they're feminine beards.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? But yeah, the fact that the women didn't have physical beards in there, not only did it not bother me, I think it would have bothered me more if they did. I think that was a needed adaptation for the translation of that. Did it bother either of you that the dwarven women didn't have beards?
I mean, we made a crack about it when we were watching it, but then also that can also be attributed as a joke thing that people have said about it. You can tell them apart by their beards. You know how Aragorn does it.
Yeah.
Beards. beards.
It's the beards. All right, what's next?
From Dwan William, watched Rings of Power yesterday and couldn't sleep all night, and not in a good way. Sorry in advance for the incoming essay and negativity.
Uh-oh, is this going to be a six-parter?
Well, we don't have time for that, but that's unfortunate. I guess we'll just wait to comment on the rest of it. All right, what's next?
From Ben Burgess, I loved the first 2 episodes. First Age flashback was awesome. Elrond and Durin was awesome. Looking forward to more and seeing Sauron.
Yeah, again, I'm just happy that episode 2 came last, because if it started off with a bang and then episode 2 was episode 1 and I had to wait all week on a down note, it would be very different. Thankfully for somebody like me, episode 2 came last and I'm actually excited about episode 3, but let's see what episode 3 is. All right, what's next?
From Dwan William, I watched it first as a Tolkien fan and then as a casual fan. The second experience is infinitely better than the first. I'm a Tolkien fan, so I would disagree, but I understand that you're going to have your own views on it. Because for me, it was, oh, hey, what a fun Easter egg. Oh, hey, what an interesting view on this. Oh, yeah, I love this kind of thing. So it worked for me, but I get why it wouldn't work for you.
He's got the next part.
Oh, there's a second part. Sorry.
He didn't number
I didn't
them,
hear
that's
that. As a casual, what's not to like? Big sea monster, cool trees, hot elf lady, hot elf dude, weird old man that's definitely not Sauron, wink wink, CGI. I mean,
see, I'm not the only one who thinks it could be Sauron.
Could be. But I stand by that, though. Like, I think as a Tolkien fan, it works well, but hey, I get it.
It's funny because to me, I have friends of mine who are much more into the history of the books and all that kind of stuff than I am. They're actually the ones who like the show more than I did.
Yeah.
As the harder core Tolkien fans. Now, not all harder core Tolkien fans are going to feel that way.
Yeah.
A lot of harder core Tolkien fans hated Peter Jackson's movies for that very reason. But I mean, I'm just saying for my immediate circle, the 2 or 3 people I know who are like really into the books actually quite liked it more than I did. But,
Yeah.
all right. What's next?
From Philip, the HBO Max YouTube channel released the first episode of House of the Dragon last night.
Yeah.
Coincidence, or is HBO playing the Game of Thrones?
Listen, they're not the first show to do this. That was a brilliant marketing move. Like, you take that first episode because you know the world liked it, and you say, hey, for those of you who aren't HBO Max subscribers,
Here you go.
here's a little taste.
Your first bump's free, kids.
Yeah, you think you might want to sign up? It was a brilliant move because they got a good show on their hand. Hell, I think they should have released the first 2 episodes on YouTube to get people hooked in. All right, what's next?
From Aspor Loki Runson, it's fine. No masterpiece. Dialogue felt off.
Yeah, like I said, if I had to judge right now, if it was a 2-episode race, and again, I know we don't want to compare and control, but 2 high fantasy shows playing at the exact same time. If I had to pick one right now, and they said, hey, John, you can only, from this point on, you can only watch House of the Dragon or Rings of Power, I'll tell you it's House of the Dragon right now. Yeah, I mean, I might not feel that way after 5 episodes, but right now,
Sure.
yeah, they've just done it. They've done a better job so far through 2 episodes, I think, on House of the Dragon. All right, what's next?
From Dwan William, as a Tolkien fan, Rings of Power made so many thematic changes to the point it feels not like Tolkien, but a soulless imitation of Tolkien.
I disagree.
Yeah.
If anything, I mean, like Rob said earlier, I felt like I was in the world. There are some differences, sure. But again, I mean, I just find that a lot of people forget that Peter Jackson's movie. Here's the thing. We have come to a point in our society where to a lot more people on our side, you alluded to this earlier, Kris, Peter Jackson's movies is Lord of the Rings. Like to most people on our side, the books aren't. It's Peter Jackson's movies. So to us, Peter Jackson's movies are the canon. Peter Jackson's movies make some major changes.
It
from
took
the
a
books.
lot of liberties.
Like with the most important characters too.
Yeah.
Like major liberties. And everybody just conveniently forgets that because to a lot of people's minds, the books were, or the movies were the canon. And I never care about changes from a source material, whether it's a comic book source material, a book source material, as long as the end result. So my problems with episode 1, and I have a multitude of them, have nothing to do with, well, that's not what they did in the book. It has nothing to do with that. It's on its own merits. Did it work or did it not work? So, I don't know.
I think also it's the overall, like the changes that Peter Jackson made in his film in adapting one medium to another. There are things, because you have a visual shorthand. When you're reading a book, you have to make sure that you're conveying these things with words.
Yeah.
But with cinema, you've got visuals that can, what would take Tolkien 2 pages to do, you get in 1 shot. So that's why the difference in character and things that are changed, things are compressed. But the spirit of what Professor Tolkien had written, I think, was embodied by what Peter Jackson wrote.
I agree with you.
Or
Yeah.
Peter
But
Jackson directed.
But I also, in only 2 episodes in, ask me again after 5 or 6 episodes.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Right now, I feel like the spirit of it is there. And
Yeah,
it has a power.
I think it's too early for me to say if that's
agree.
true yet.
I agree.
You know, but I do think, I mean, obviously, you know, there's not jet fighters in the sky. And
Yeah.
there's no like,
The
you know,
Top Gun gong.
Yeah, there's no Alan Parsons Project doing the music like in Lady Hawk. You know, there's no rock band singing on the side. You know, we don't get Nickelback. Maybe that's coming.
It's coming.
Yeah.
It's
But I
coming.
mean,
Elven
A hero
Nickelback.
can save us.
I think that for right now there is an attempt to bring back the world of J.R.R. Tolkien, certainly adapted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adapted into something different. I mean, I'm curious to see where these storytellers are going to take us. I think what it's I mean, you definitely had a directorial point of view in these 2 episodes, but he didn't write these episodes. So it's a TV show. So you've got the showrunners, and it's up to them to take us on this journey. And I don't think we're going to really know how successful it is till we get to the end of these 8 episodes.
I completely agree.
For sure.
Like for me, it's as far as is the show meeting the spirit of the thing. To me, it's a so far so good. Like so far so good, but it is too early to make the call. But I have felt like I have been whisked into the world of Middle Earth. I feel like it's taking me there. I feel like the spirit of it is there. But I'm not saying that definitively because we're only 2 episodes in. Again, ask me after episode 5 or 6, and let's see if we're still there then. I may not be. All right, what's next?
From Tim Platt, I love a good score, and this was fire.
The music was great. Like I got to admit, even in episode 1, which I was not a fan of, the music was wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
All throughout it. I was a little bit worried about it, but it did everything that like Shore's score did in the original Lord of the Rings.
Do you know they're releasing albums for episodes 1 and 2?
I did not know that.
Ooh.
I saw that on Bear McCreary's Facebook page.
Oh,
I
heck
did not
yeah.
know that. All right, what's next?
All right, Dwan William, 1 of 2. I cannot unnotice how the elves were portrayed as heroes fighting a war against a great evil, rather than a people who left Valinor out of hubris and were forbidden from returning for their sins of kinslaying, allowed back, not for their heroic victories, but for their arduous atonement.
Again, but ask the average fan, is that important to the story that's being told right now? My argument would be no. It's not an essential part of it. It's not like, even to fans of like the Jackson iterations, that part of the background of them is not important to the story. It's just not, and therefore it becomes one of those elements that I think becomes advantageous for adaptation. And so, yeah, you're right. Listen, if you want to go through, again, we could do this in Lord of the Rings. If we wanted to, we could sit down with Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies and do a pause every time there's a difference from the books.
Yeah,
That would be a long fucking video.
absolutely.
I mean, we can do that. But the question, like you were bringing up, Rob, is like when Peter makes those changes, it's in service to the story that he's telling. And I think as long as this show does that as well, like when they make their adaptation, is it in service to the story they're telling? I think that's going to be the ultimate litmus test. And like you've pointed out, we got to get a few more episodes in before we can really tell if they're going to be successful at that or not.
Yeah. I mean, I don't claim to be like a Tolkien theologian. I'm no Stephen Colbert, but I'm entertained so far. And I think the spirit of the story is here, and we'll see how it all plays out. I think it's too early to make very big swings about it, though.
All right, what's next?
From Jay Master, sending in a $20
Jay
super
Master,
chat.
thank you, man.
Thank you. I watched Rings of Power this morning. I really love the first 2 episodes. I'm excited to see the next episodes. As someone who has never seen the Lord of the Rings movie since I
Wow.
was 7 years
Oh,
old.
since you were okay.
When the first movie came out.
Or
Is there a
was
second
a period
part?
there? Maybe that's a period. Since the
I
first
haven't seen
movie-
it since the second.
Since the first movie came out.
Ooh. That's cool. I do a rewatch every year. I love
I mean,
these.
I have too until a couple of years ago I stopped. But yeah, I generally have always done a rewatch every year. Listen, I'm glad you loved it right from episode 1. I was not, listen, this could turn out to be like The Shield. You know, The Shield is a show that took a little while to find its footing, but a lot of TV files consider it to be the greatest television show of all time. Maybe this will be that, but there are also a lot of shows that start a little bit shaky and end up being pretty shaky. What the fate of the Lord of the Rings is, the Rings of Power, I don't know, but they did. For me, they started shaky. For you, it didn't, and that's great. And let's see how episodes 4, 5, and 6 roll on. But maybe that's actually really interesting. You watch it because I had Ray over watching the first episode of House of the Dragon, right? When he had never watched Game of Thrones. And I was fascinated by that. And so it's actually fascinating to hear a perspective of somebody who hasn't watched like the movie since you were a child on that. So thank you for sharing your perspective on that, Jay. And thanks for supporting us on that level, man. All right, what's next?
From Alan Ling. So I wasn't really bothered too much by the pacing of the first episode. I thought it would be worse. I may be one of the few okay with the first episode. I liked both. Not sure where it's going.
And I think therein lies the problem for some people. Not sure where it's going. Like, again, you watch the first episode of The Patient. Yeah, I'm sure there are going to be a lot of unexpected twists and turns, and absolutely. But yeah, at least get a sense from episode 1 where this is going. We're 2 episodes in right now. Okay, I will say I think I'm starting to see where this is going, that this is ultimately going to be a show about the ability for the worlds of men and elves and all that kind of stuff to come together to be ready to stand against force. Okay, I'm starting to get a picture of that, but we are 2 hours in and we're just starting to get a picture of that. So I think when you say not really sure where we're going, I think that's the problem for a lot of people. It's like 2 hours in, I'm not really sure where we're going. I don't know. Let's see what happens, though. I certainly love the second episode, so I don't know. Let's see how episode 3 turns out. All right, now is that it?
That's it.
All
And
right.
guys, that'll do it then for our first after show for Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. For some of you guys, it was knocked it out of the park, episodes 1 and 2. For some of you guys, neither of the episodes worked for you. For people like me, it was 50-50. I didn't really care all that much for episode 1, loved episode 2. How is episode 3 going to unfold? We'll find that out next week. And when we do, we'll also be joined by Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, where can people follow you online?
You can find me on Instagram at RM Burnett. Find me on Twitter at BurnettRM.
And tell them about the video you just put online.
Well, yes, I just put on a new episode, the first episode produced in-house of the Designing Hollywood podcast, and with the great designer who did stuff like Life of Pi, but did Miss Marvel, a man who works in both the Hindi, Bollywood, and Hollywood system. So check that out. It's really interesting. And again, we made it in here. Jonathan Voico produced the live show, and Ray Ora did graphics.
And by the way, the next episode is going to be with the designer of House of the Dragon, who also designed Harry Potter, James Bond, Black Widow, and a huge thing. So some really, really cool things coming on.
She's very French, and she will tell you the secret to a great villain, as if they are sexy.
Oh, I love her. Yes.
It's great.
And also we'll be joined by Kris Carr. Kris, where can people find you?
You can find me at actor Kris Carr on Twitter or on Instagram. You can also find me at Speak Friends Studio, which is Lord of the Rings inspired. Be sure you're following us. We are going to do a couple flash sales and stuff this weekend. So,
all right, guys. And of course, my name's John Campea. On my way to the Hollywood Bowl, where I'm going to go watch John Williams in concert tonight in the 88-degree midnight heat.
That's
Even at night, it's going to be 88 degrees. So anyway, guys, thanks a lot for being here. Don't forget, we will be back, of course, next Friday for the next installment of our Rings of Power After Show, and we'll be talking about episode 3. I haven't seen episode 3. I don't think anybody has. So that's going to be a whole new thing for us. Hope to see you guys then. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.